Tu surveilles, et si ça part, tu
Keep an eye on it. And if there's a bite, tell Daddy, look, there's a bite, Daddy. And then you're going to reel it in. How do you reel it in?
Il est là, il est là. Allez, vas-y, ramène, Lolo. Ramène. Petit poisson. Ah bah il s'est décroché tout seul, super.
Là, ça va.
Là, ça va?
Oui, ça me mouille.
Ça te mouille pas. Tu lui fais un bisou?
Je suis maintenant conseillère pédagogique.
I am now an educational consultant, but for 20 years I was a kindergarten teacher. And what became very clear to me was that I met mostly mothers and very few fathers. And I wondered whether there were any fathers in Martinique. The children I meet are children who don't have parents, mothers who are trying but don't know how to cope on their own. When they're present, there are also fathers who also don't know what to do or how to be fathers. The result is that the children are completely lost.
When I arrived in Martinique from Paris, what struck me during the meetings and exchanges that I had with people was that many of the children did not bear their father's last name, for example.
I have 4 children with 4 different wives. It's hard to remain faithful. Sometimes the affairs of the heart go astray. Sometimes they go well. It was the same with my father. I have lived my life like he did. He was married to my mother. He went elsewhere to have children. We are in the same situation.
We've received many testimonies about absent fathers, broken relationships, and unfaithful fathers, just like this one. In Martinique, there are 3 times more single-parent families than in mainland France, with multiple broken family units, and the hookup culture is widespread. The roots of this somewhat desperate situation can be found in the history of the people of Martinique.
There are historical reasons. For example, we know that men had a difficult time during the period of colonization and slavery. Little by little, men lost their credibility. They were frequently humiliated during the period of slavery, for example. It was almost as if being a man was a shameful thing, because they were always being punished, whipped, and mistreated in front of their own families, in front of their own peers.
It's true that men got off to a bad start with slavery. The couples did not marry. Indeed, slave couples were not entitled to marry. The women were the only ones to educate the children, because the men were sometimes sold to another property, or they had a child with a master who also did not marry them. So the women took on the primary role, and all this went on for a while. and indeed the Church found it difficult to bring together Christian families as a result. Although there was no problem with the Christian faith that flourished among both men and women, the family itself was not always formed. This created a wound that needed to be healed. I know.
Looking at the magnificent landscape of Martinique, you could almost forget this painful past. But from time to time, you come across signs of this open wound. In the tropical forest in the north of the island, at Anse-Couleuvre, there are the ruins of an old sugar plantation, which remind us of the thousands of slaves who worked on the sugarcane plantations. In the south of the island, near the Rocher du Diamant, there is also the monumental sculpture of Anse Cafard, which recalls the sinking of the last slave ship in the history of Martinique. Chained in the hold, about 50 slaves were lost at sea. Indeed, although slavery was abolished in 1848, the practice is still present in the collective unconscious. Numerous sociological studies have demonstrated the extent to which the black males of Martinique felt helpless and inferior, and now find it difficult to take on their responsibility within their family.
What is at stake is getting each person to take on their responsibilities and free themselves from their shackles. Indeed, given our history of slavery and colonization, we were deprived of freedom, not just physically with chains, but also with inner shackles. That is, an incapacity to take on responsibility, an incapacity to handle what is given to us.
The studies show that, in Martinique, there are many women who have experienced incest or rape. And so it would appear that there are some deep wounds in their personal history, which could explain why men find it difficult to take on their proper role, and that their first experience of a relationship with a man is often a distorted one, which impacts their representation of a normal relationship between a man and a woman.
We worked with the former family pastoral leaders on a family roadmap put together in accordance with the heart of God. And in this charter, one of the articles says that the Christian bride must trust her husband. Well, this triggered a strong reaction from the women, including the Christians. Because to place your trust in a man here borders on the supernatural. Women have reasons, many reasons not to trust. I remember a woman who said in a testimony, "My husband cheated on me, he left a big mark on me, he cheated on me once or twice, but I cheated on him for 15 years. I did not cheat on him with someone else, but because after his infidelity I no longer respected him at all, neither as a man nor as a husband in the family. He no longer had the right to say anything. It was I who imposed my law, and each time he sought to open his mouth, I reminded him of his infidelity in order to belittle him."
A new concept emerged in Martinique as a result of the extended role played by women. This concept is the Potomitan woman, which is the woman who takes charge of everything and occupies every role.
Women are referred to as potomitan, that is the pillar in the middle of the hut that holds everything up. And this applies to education, prayer life, spiritual life, etc.
Actually, there's something that I don't really like about this Potomitan woman story. For me, it is as if it has become normal for women to be single parents, that they're the ones who manage the education of the children, their studies and work, etc. Indeed, they're leading the way because they have no choice. But it shouldn't be this way. The normal way would be for there to be a mom and a dad, living together in the same household, not the single-parent family, which still predominates in people's minds.
The father is a point of reference. On a number of occasions, I've met brothers from the community who told me, he's not my dad, he's my genitor. But I try to get them to accept that you can still start as a genitor and end up as a dad. This aroused a reaction, and it got us thinking about what needed to be done so that men could take up their place in the family. But not just the family. They must take up their place in the church, because the church is a family. And so with the local bishop, many initiatives have been launched to help men get together with other men, to reflect on what it is to be a man in the Catholic Church, what it is to be a man who believes, and what it is to be a man who is committed to the church. Since last year, I've been in charge of the pastoral care of men. And as part of this pastoral care, we are trying to launch initiatives so that men can have times of prayer, times to proclaim the gospel, times of healing, and times of celebration. Getting to know other men is like having a kind of secret garden, because these are discussions that we cannot have elsewhere. We are among people that we can trust, we share the same problems, we have shared viewpoints, and we can find help from the brothers. Our men's meetings are necessary, but they are also playing a prophetic role in profoundly modifying the West Indian community of Martinique.
Here, in the Corridon district in Fort-de-France, men are now getting involved in the life of the parish. Repair and maintenance work, as well as times of sharing and social interaction. In Martinique, the pastoral care of men, like the pastoral care of the family, is an answer to this difficult issue of fatherhood. These men who are finding their place in the church, these men who get involved by taking up their role as a father or a husband, are the sign that something can change in the society of Martinique. Yes, it's not a question of ignoring the past, but escaping from the circle of resentment. This is what Francelise thinks, the Martinique lady settled in Guadeloupe. For her, it is the only way out of this dead end. There is a whole group of people that fight change. So we, on the contrary, we must fight to overcome this past way of thinking. Getting over it is the only path to recovery. These people who look to the past to find recovery talk of recovery. So, whatever the cost, they work so that slave masters would heal what they did to the blacks. So there is hate that grows in these people's hearts that prevents them from moving on. Moving on. In Martinique, Christians trying to find ways to focus on meeting and reconciliation. For instance, a Father and Son's Day. It was cancelled this year because of the pandemic, yet it was experienced within the family circle, like Patrick and his son Etienne, who made time to share a covenant prayer.
The Pope frequently says that we must have a creative intelligence. Each one of us is unique, Every child is unique, each father too. Through the strength of the Holy Spirit, we must ask for grace to find what will allow change and then submit ourselves to change. A teenager is quite critical of his parents. I remember well with our youngest daughter that we had quite tense words because, quite simply, I didn't take the time to listen to her properly. I realized that I was inflicting my ideas of things on her, and I didn't have the time to listen to what her life experience was. I have some stereotypes. That's good for you, that's not good for you. I'm your father and I decide. That's not the right relationship. It's a relationship where listening to each other is very important.
Monte encore un peu. Ouais, c'est bon, tu es bon, tu vois. Les autres, n'avaient pas de mouvement, et là, tu as un mouvement. Et tu fais faire 2 tours, tu as le mouvement, tu fais faire 2 tours. Donc, il faut mettre les mouvements. Le mouvement pour savoir la semaine que ça a été.
Like everywhere, in Martinique, forgiveness leads to reconciliation. Awareness, accepting the situation as it is, leads to the well-being of forgiveness.
Mon père, c'était comme beaucoup d'hommes martiniquais.
My father was a man who, just as many Martinique men did, he liked women. That having been said, he tended to treat himself to living for pleasure. At first, when I was young, I too was like him. I had many girlfriends. After 6 months, I would change and start again.
Au bout de 6 mois, c'était fini, je leur changeais, je recommençais. Et c'est vrai que les prières, elles étaient là.
But I prayed. God was with me. I think that I truly met God just after my marriage. God came to find me to let me know that He didn't want me to be like that. When we went to our first Cana meeting, during the testimony of a couple, many thoughts struck me. I burst out crying, sobbing. I said to myself, it's not possible. What's happening to me? Tears ran down my face. My heart was so big, and God gave me new strength for my married life. A couple's life is not to look at others. It is to make your wife happy, the one I said yes to.
The fact of being confronted with this question of paternity here in the West Indies brought me back to my own story, since my father died in February 2019. Many positive and negative feelings came to the surface again then, and I realized that I admired my father, that I had inherited things from him that I was proud of, but there was also suffering because he had had children outside marriage and not with my mother. Suffering too because he had a violent side to him. One day when he came to see me, I was in Sofia Antipolis near Nice. In a face-to-face meeting, I was able to say to him, "Today I want to tell you the truth. I have felt hate for you, I was humiliated, I wasn't proud of you, but today I have come to say that I forgive you." It is what I try to do when preaching, to demonstrate the value of forgiveness and reconciliation.
These personal steps that restore father-child relationship show to what extent it is possible to break the curse. And from the Martinique people's point of view, memory can be healed. The psychological consequences of slavery, the damage that is passed down from one generation to the next, the victims' patterns of trauma, all these can be avoided.
Il y a une guérison collective qui doit se vivre.
Generalized healing must be achievable, but I believe that it must start with individual healing. I think it could take a long time, but when there is personal healing, it impacts the whole family. If in each family there are couples who choose to convert, changes can be seen. Even when they come to confession, when the fathers come to confession, if they have truly met Jesus, we really see the effect this has on the whole family. The children also change their way of life because there is forgiveness. A father who says to his child, "Forgive me for doing so and so to you," that can be counted as a miracle in Martinique. Doing this is something that can change their way of looking at things. What does God see as the face of fatherhood? In his apostolic letter Patris Corde, written for the year of Saint Joseph, Pope Francis gives us leads. If we look at the few verses in the Gospel that concern Joseph, a figure emerges.
Having turned over all these thoughts in our minds, we have come to realize that fatherhood comes from God. And it's true there is the real work of conversion that needs doing before discovering that we are equally children of God with our own dignity, and at the same time His way of fathering encourages us to be fathers, and that God the Father lets us at the same time become better fathers. Something that was very important to me when discovering my place as father is the finding of Jesus in the temple by his parents, where Jesus said to Joseph and Mary, "Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" So it's necessary that my children and my sons respect me as their earthly father. But equally slowly in the future, they need to discover that God is their real Father, that the perfection they are striving for won't be found in me, that I don't try to be this illusory perfection that would harm us all, as it would be idolatry. What pleases me about St. Joseph is his discretion, more and more letting his place of the real Father to our Father in heaven.
The main thing that I take away from the figure of St. Joseph is certainly this grace of letting oneself be surprised. Surprised by events, surprised by the Holy Spirit's inspirations, and to address them. It is a dimension of St. Joseph that inspires me, as I have been able to realize in my own personal and family life that ready-made schemes don't exist.
What
Touches me about St. Joseph is the fact that he is a man of action, a man of obedience. In his sleep, he is told to get married with Mary and look after the child she is pregnant with. He wakes up and does exactly what the angel told him. When he is in Bethlehem, he is told, "Take the mother and the child and go to Egypt." He does as he's told. And when he's in Egypt a few years later and is told, "Those that wanted to kill you are dead, you can return to Israel," he obeys. He takes the child and Mary and returns to Israel. That's what is expected from a father, someone ready at the right moment who knows how to respond to God's request. He's a figure of simplicity. For me, he sets an example of someone who takes care of baby Jesus, this fragile child who needs to mature, who looks after the ones given to him.
La figure de Saint Joseph m'inspire la paix.
The figure of Saint Joseph fills me with peace. His figure instills peace in me because precisely in this context of men in Martinique, of our men's place in Martinique society, men must be able to find peace again. The peace that Saint Joseph enjoys can be passed on to men so that they're not only able to feel appreciated, but also find their place. When I look at Saint Joseph, he's always upright. He's standing up straight. And the man from Martinique must stand up straight as well.
I believe that there is, through what the Pope says about St. Joseph, but also through the figure of paternity, a real way of healing, especially for the people of the West Indies. It is as if someone discovers a source, a gold vein. This source has not yet been exploited. The feminine source has been. Martinique women work wonders. They are faithful, efficient, they evangelize, they humanize. They are involved in society and do endless good in the church. However, there is a source within the church, perhaps a sign of the third millennium, in any case the 21st century, the source of St. Joseph, the place and the role of a man of the lay ministry, a family father figure. This especially is an immense source of hope.
Du père de famille, et ça c'est une source d'espérance immense.
From the letter of St. Paul to the Ephesians. This then is what I pray, kneeling before the Father, from whom every fatherhood in heaven or on earth takes its name. In the abundance of his glory, may he, through his Spirit, enable you to grow firm in power with regard to your inner self. Our Father in heaven, we entrust to you all fathers here on earth, that with your help they will be strong enough to be upright, responsible, capable of leading their children to believe in you. Please heal people with wounded memories. Come and restore unity and peace in the hearts of all families.